Hi, welcome to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Mariandrea, and this is day 5 of the Poetry Readathon. The Poetry Readathon is hosted by Charlie at Charlie Book Reads and Charles at Charles Heathcote. In this video, I will be focusing on prompt number 7, pre-1950. I want to make this video as an ode to one of my favorite poets of all time. She is a cultural icon. She is part of my cultural heritage. She is a feminist. She fought for women's rights, especially for women's rights to an education. And this is Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz. Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz was born in Mexico. At the time, it was New Spain, to parents of Spanish descent. And she was a bright child. She wanted to go to university. She even wanted to cross-dress as a man to be able to go to university. Was not allowed, declined to marry, and join a convent. And she joined a convent so that she could dedicate her time to studying and reading and writing. And she loved philosophy, and you hear references and echoes of philosophers and the work of Greek philosophers in her writing. She is someone that I admire and I am grateful for. And so I want to read a poem by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. I will be reading from this little collection, Finjamos que soy feliz by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. And this is a poem that is special to me because it is a poem that reminds me of my high school Spanish class. This is one that we read in Spanish class in high school, and it resonated with us at the time, with me particularly at the time, because it is a poem about love. And I think it's angsty and passionate, like your first love. So this is the poem. Ya que para despedirme, dulce idolatrado dueño, ni me da licencia el llanto, ni me da lugar el tiempo. Háblente los tristes rasgos entre lastimosos ecos de mi triste pluma nunca, con más justa causa negros, y aún ésta te hablará torpe con las lágrimas que vierto, porque va borrando el agua lo que va dictando el fuego. Hablar me impiden mis ojos, y es que se anticipan ellos, viendo lo que he de decirte, a decírtelo primero. Oye la elocuencia muda que hay en mi dolor sirviendo, los suspiros de palabras, las lágrimas de conceptos. Mira la fiera borrasca que pasa en el mar del pecho, donde zozobran turbados mis confusos pensamientos. Mira cómo ya el vivir me sirve de afán grosero, que se avergüenza la vida de durarme tanto tiempo. Mira la muerte que esquiva, huye porque la deseo, que aún la muerte, si es buscada, se quiere subir de precio. Mira como el cuerpo amante, rendido a tanto tormento, siendo en lo demás cadáver, solo en el sentir es cuerpo. Mira como el alma misma aún teme en su ser exento, que quiera el dolor violar la inmunidad de lo eterno. En lágrimas y suspiros, alma y corazón a un tiempo, aquel se convierte en agua y ésta se resuelve en viento. Ya no me sirve de vida esta vida que poseo, sino de condición sola necesaria al sentimiento. Mas, ¿por qué gasto razones en contar mi pena y dejo de decir lo que es preciso por decir lo que estás viendo? En fin, te vas. Ay de mí. Dudosamente lo pienso, pues si es verdad, no estoy viva, y si viva, no lo creo. Posible es que ha de haber día tan infausto, tan funesto, en que sin ver yo las tuyas esparza las luces febo. Posible es que ha de llegar el rigor a tan severo, que no ha de darle tu vista a mis pesares aliento, que no he de ver tu semblante, que no he de escuchar tus ecos, que no he de gozar tus brazos. ni me ha de animar tu aliento. Ay, mi bien, ay, prenda mía, dulce fin de mis deseos. ¿Por qué me llevas el alma dejándome el sentimiento? Mira que es contradicción que no cabe en un sujeto, tanta muerte en una vida, tanto dolor en un muerto. Mas ya que es preciso, ay triste, en mi infeliz suceso, ni vivir con la esperanza, ni morir con el tormento. Dame algún consuelo, tú en el dolor que padezco, y quien en el suyo muere, viva siquiera en tu pecho. No te olvides que te adoro, y sirvante de recuerdo las finezas que me debes, sino las prendas que tengo. Acuérdate que mi amor, haciendo gala del riesgo, solo por atropellarlo, se alegraba de tenerlo. Y si mi amor no es bastante, el tuyo mismo te acuerdo, que no es poco empeño haber empezado ya en empeño. Acuérdate, Señor mío, de tus nobles juramentos, y lo que juró tu boca no lo desmientan tus hechos. Y perdona si en temer mi agravio, mi bien, te ofendo, que no es dolor el dolor que se contiene en lo atento. Y a Dios, que con el ahogo que me embarga los alientos, ni sé ya lo que te digo, ni lo que te escribo leo. This is one of my favorite poems from Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz. And now I want to read an article that I found. It's from the Poetry Society of America. And the article is titled On Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz, and this is by Ada Limon. If you've been watching my videos this Poetry Readathon week, you know that I talked about Ada Limon, I think in my first video about nature poetry. I love the work of Ada Limon, and I was so happy to find this article by her. This is what she says. On Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz by Ada Limon. Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz, The Immortality of Sound and Fury. There is a fly buzzing around my head right now. The sound it's making is all I can focus on while I write this. I look at the page, I hear the fly, I hear the fly. I look at the page, it's not how I intended to write. With a tiny winged beast dive-bombing my brain, but it makes me think about sound, the obsession of poets, the sounds we grind into our papers, a crazy fly of sound in the ear, the addicting earworm of a poem has always been a weird and intense obsession for me. Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz knew well the weird and intense obsessions of language. Known to be highly intelligent, Cruz, a youth, cut off a lock of her hair each time she failed to remember one of her Latin grammar lessons because, quote, it didn't seem right to me that a head so naked of knowledge should be dressed up with hair, for knowledge is a more desirable adornment, end quote. Born in Mexico in 1651 or 1648, depending on the source, in San Miguel Nepantla, when Mexico was still a viceroyalty of New Spain, Cruz was a self-taught scholar who devoted her life to religious studies, languages, literature, and poetry. Though I could easily devote my life to studying her biography, it's her sound-packed, Baroque-style poetry that I find electrifying and strange and worthy of worship. Excuse me. Born just over 100 years after Cortés landed on the Yucatan Peninsula and alive during Mexico's storied colonial period, Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz has been embraced for years by feminist movements and Chicano Latino movements. I didn't learn about her in poetry class, not as an undergraduate nor as a graduate student. Instead, I learned about her in Chicana studies. We studied her for her revolutionary feminist viewings and writings, her possible secret lesbian leanings, her struggle between the Spanish and native cultures, but we didn't study her poetry, her wild yet utterly controlled sound, her focused and furious diatribes, her agonizing love sonnets, but it's her poetry that always struck me as fiercely powerful. Excuse me. I wanted to show you how much of her sound play influenced my own work. I wanted to share how she drives a rhythm home, But when I found the poem I remembered loving so in Spanish, I couldn't find a translation that focused on the sounds, so I thought I'd translate it on my own. I can understand a little, but for the most part, even though my grandfather crossed the border in 1917, Spanish wasn't really spoken in our home. Luckily, my older brother generously offered to help, and I'm able to share Cruz's original poem and our translation here. Even if our even if our translation has failed, savor the original, and even if you don't speak Spanish, attempt to read a few lines out loud, and you'll see how necessary it is to celebrate Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz, not just as an important historic figure, but as a true poetic master, the original. So this is the poem in Spanish. De una reflexión cuerda con que mitiga el dolor de una pasión. That's the title. The poem goes. Con el dolor de la mortal herida, de un agravio de amor me lamentaba, y por ver si la muerte se llegaba, procuraba que fuese más crecida. Toda en el mal el alma divertida, pena por pena su dolor sumaba, y en cada circunstancia ponderaba que sobraban 1000 muertes a una vida, y cuando al golpe de uno y otro tiro, rendido el corazón daba penoso, señas de dar el último suspiro, no sé con qué destino prodigioso, volví en mi acuerdo y dije, ¿qué me admiro? ¿Quién en amor ha sido más dichoso? The translation, titled The Ripcord of Love, translation by Ada Limon and Cyrus Limon. With the force of a mortal blow, with the sting of love's sorry sorrow, I watched for death's final call to go. I begged for the flood's big swallow. Evil plagued my funny little soul. Pain by pain, there grew a hollow, so that in that time that dared to follow, I'd have traded life to die and wallow. And when the blows refused to end, and my surrendered heart to mend, in the final throes, in the blood's last sigh, a strange magic rescued me just then. I came back. But why should I live? Why? For who in love has been luckier than I? I'll link this article by Ada Limon on Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz from it's the Poetry Society of America website. So that is all I wanted to share about Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz, her writing, her life, and I'm so happy that Ada Limon translated a poem that I could read in English for you. And let me know, have you read Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz? Do you have a favorite verse by her? If I'm honest, this poem that I read initially, my favorite line is háblente los tristes rasgos entre lastimosos ecos de mi triste pluma. Echoes of my sad pen, echoes of my despairing pen, echoes of my depressed pen, my desperate pen. Translating her work would take a really long time. It's so deep and full of emotion. Yeah. Anyway, from my home to yours, from my heart to yours, I hope you are well, and I hope you have all that you need to feel alive. Hasta la próxima.